The shuttle door blew open before I was ready for it, and the wind ripped the air right out of my lungs. 1 second I was strapped into a jump seat, and the next I was falling through orange clouds with my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it would break through. Below me, a jungle the color of rust stretched out in every direction, thick and endless, hiding whatever waited to kill us the moment we landed. My name is Cale Doran, and I was one of 40 cadets thrown out of that shuttle with nothing but a strapped kit and a countdown clock in my head. We had trained for 2 years at the academy, learning tactics, survival theory, and how to read alien terrain from orbit. None of it mattered now. This was a Class 3 world, the kind mapped only from a safe distance, because nothing sent down ever came back the same. The instructors called it a final evaluation. The rest of us called it a death sentence with a fancy name. My parachute yanked hard against my shoulders, snapping me out of free fall so fast my vision went white at the edges. I hit a canopy of broad, waxy leaves and crashed through them, branches slapping my helmet, until I landed hard on a slope, slick with something that stung where it touched my skin. I rolled twice, stopped against a root thick as my body, and lay there for a moment, just breathing. Above me, the twin suns burned through a haze the color of dried blood. The air smelled sharp, almost metallic, like rain about to fall on hot stone. Somewhere close, something screeched, a sound that didn't belong to any creature I had ever studied in a classroom. I forced myself up, joints aching, and checked my kit. Rifle, rations, water purifier, medical kit, rope, knife. Standard issue for cadets who were expected to fail. I looked around for the others, hoping at least one had landed nearby, because surviving a Class 3 world alone was not survival. It was just a slower way to die. That was when I heard the laughing. It was bright and easy, completely wrong for the situation, and it came from somewhere above me, further up the slope. I climbed toward it, careful of the acid-slicked leaves, my rifle raised, expecting anything except what I found. A girl was hanging upside down from a vine, her boot caught in a loop, her kit still strapped tight across her chest. She had dark hair falling loose around her face, streaked with mud, and she was laughing like she had just gotten off a fairground ride instead of crash landing on a planet built to kill her. "Little help," she said, still grinning, twisting to look at me. "Or are you just going to stand there staring?" I didn't move for a second, because nothing about this made sense. Her name tag read Ellison, M. I had seen her before, back at the academy, quiet in the hallways, never remarkable in any of our tactical simulations. Nothing about her file suggested she would be the first person I met smiling on a Deathworld. I cut the vine with my knife and caught her before she fell, and she landed light on her feet like she had done this 100 times before. "Thanks," she said, brushing dirt off her sleeve like it was an ordinary Tuesday. "Cale, right? Doran?" "That's me," I said, still scanning the tree line, my nerves stretched tight as wire. "You do know where we are." "Class 3 Deathworld," she said, stretching her arms over her head like she was warming up for a run. "Yeah, I read the briefing same as you." "Then why are you smiling?" She looked around at the jungle, the twisted red trees, the mist curling low over the ground, and something in her expression shifted, not fear, not excitement, something calmer than both. "This feels like vacation," she said. I stared at her, waiting for the joke, but her face stayed easy, untroubled, like she genuinely meant it. Before I could ask what she meant, a distant scream tore through the trees, followed by the sharp crack of rifle fire. Someone else had landed nearby, and they were already in trouble. Mira's smile didn't fade. If anything, it sharpened into something focused, something ready. "Come on," she said, already moving toward the sound. "Sounds like the fun started without us." I followed her because I didn't know what else to do, and because some part of me, buried under the fear, wanted to see what kind of person smiled on a world like this. We pushed through thick undergrowth, thorns catching at our sleeves, until we broke into a small clearing where 2 cadets were backed against a fallen tree, rifles raised at something moving in the shadows, just beyond the light. One of them was Torin Vex, broad-shouldered and pale with panic, his rifle shaking in his hands. The other was Lyra Sund, steadier, but her eyes were wide with the same fear. "What is that?" Torin said, voice cracking, as a shape slid between the trees, low and long, its skin the same rust color as the jungle floor, making it almost invisible until it moved. Mira crouched low beside them, studying the creature, with an expression closer to curiosity than fear. "It's testing us," she said quietly. "Watch how it circles. It's not hunting yet, it's deciding if we're worth the effort." "That's comforting," Torin muttered. "It should be," Mira said. "Means we have time to make it decide we're not." She reached into her kit and pulled out a small flare, cracking it to life with a sharp burst of red light. The creature recoiled instantly, hissing, its long body sliding backward into the darker brush. "They don't like sudden light," she said, standing up slowly. "Filed that away the second I saw it react to the flash on my scope earlier." "You've been here 5 minutes," Lyra said, staring at her. "Long enough," Mira said, and there was no arrogance in it, just simple confidence, like she was stating the weather. We regrouped near the fallen tree, and one by one, more cadets found their way to us, drawn by the flare and the sound of our voices. Nia Brandt arrived first, quiet and sharp-eyed, followed by Owen Fairweather, limping slightly from a hard landing, and Dessa Marlowe, who looked like she had been crying but had stopped somewhere along the way. Within an hour, our scattered group had grown to 11, out of the 40 who had jumped. The rest were somewhere else in this endless red jungle. Alive or not, we had no way of knowing. Commander Ashgrove's voice crackled once through our comm units, distant and clipped, reminding us that extraction would come in 14 days, provided enough of us survived to be worth extracting. It was the only communication we would get. After that, silence. 14 days on a world that had killed every previous team sent to study it. I watched Mira as the others set up a rough perimeter, dragging fallen branches into a barrier, checking weapons, whispering nervous theories about what might come next. She moved through all of it with the same loose calm, checking angles, testing the ground, tasting the air like she was reading a language the rest of us hadn't learned yet. "You're not scared," I said finally, unable to hold the question back any longer. She looked at me, and for the first time, something serious flickered behind her eyes. "I didn't say that," she said. "I said it feels like vacation. Those aren't the same thing." "Explain that to me," I said. "Because right now, none of this makes sense." She was quiet for a moment, glancing at the darkening sky, the twin suns beginning to sink behind the tree line, painting everything in deeper shades of red. "Where I come from," she said, "this would be an upgrade." Before I could ask what she meant, a low horn sounded somewhere in the distance, deep and resonant, shaking loose birds, or whatever passed for birds here, from the canopy above us. Every cadet froze. "What was that?" Dessa whispered. Mira's eyes narrowed, tracking the sound, calculating something the rest of us couldn't see yet. "That," she said quietly, "was dinner being announced, and I don't think we're the ones eating." The group tensed, weapons rising, eyes scanning the tree line, but Mira didn't look afraid. She looked like someone studying a puzzle she was determined to solve, and somehow, that confidence was more unsettling than any monster in the dark. Night fell fast on that world, faster than any of us expected, the twin suns dropping below the horizon within minutes rather than the slow hour we were used to. Darkness swallowed the jungle whole, and with it came sounds we hadn't heard during the day, deep clicks and low growls threading through the trees, circling closer with every passing minute. We built a fire, though Mira warned us to keep it small, explaining that anything too bright might draw more attention than the darkness itself. She was right about the light, the way she seemed to be right about everything since we landed, and that consistency began to feel less like luck and more like something else entirely. Torin kept glancing at her while we worked, suspicion mixing with something like hope. "How do you know all this?" he finally asked, voice low so the others wouldn't hear the edge of fear in it. "You've never been off-world training before. Your file barely mentions survival scores." Mira shrugged, tying off a length of rope around a sharpened stake. "My file doesn't mention a lot of things," she said simply, and left it there, offering nothing more, though I could see the answer sitting behind her eyes, waiting for the right moment. I didn't push, not yet. There would be time for answers later, assuming we survived long enough to ask the right questions. Right now, survival mattered more than curiosity, and as the horn sounded again, closer this time, echoing through the trees like something ancient calling its children home, I understood we had only begun to see what this world was capable of. Mira stood at the edge of our small camp, staring into the darkness with that same calm smile, and for the first time, I found myself hoping she really did know something the rest of us didn't. Because if she was wrong, if this really was just another Deathworld and nothing more, none of us were walking away from it. The horn sounded a third time, and this time something answered it from deep within the trees, a low rumble that shook the ground beneath our boots. Every cadet in that clearing went still, weapons raised, breath held, waiting to see what kind of world we had truly fallen into. Mira exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders like she was preparing for a long shift rather than a fight for her life. "All right," she said quietly, more to herself than to us. "Let's see what you've got." None of us knew yet how much that simple sentence would come to define the next 14 days, or how much we would owe to a girl who looked at a Deathworld and somehow saw something worth smiling about. The rumble faded, but none of us relaxed. Whatever had answered the horn was still out there, moving through the dark, in a pattern none of us could predict. Mira crouched near the small fire, feeding it thin twigs to keep the flame low, her eyes never leaving the tree line. Nia Brandt broke the silence first, her voice tight. "We should move. Staying in one place feels like waiting to be found. Moving at night is worse," Mira said, not looking up. "We can't see the ground, we can't see what's watching us, and we'd be walking blind through territory that already knows its way around better than we do. Right now, we have a perimeter, we have light control, we have eyes on every direction. Out there, we'd have none of that." Owen Fairweather shifted his weight, wincing at the ankle he had twisted on landing. "So, we just wait? For what?" "For morning," Mira said. "Deathworlds like this one run on rhythm. Predators hunt in waves, not constantly. That horn wasn't an attack signal, it was a call, probably territorial, maybe a warning to something else out there. If it wanted us dead right now, it wouldn't have announced itself first." I watched the others take that in, some nodding slowly, some still gripping their rifles like the words hadn't reached them yet. I found myself studying Mira instead, trying to understand how someone with almost no combat record could sound so certain about a world none of us had ever set foot on before. "You keep saying things like you've seen this pattern before," I said. "Have you?" She glanced at me, firelight flickering across her face, and for a moment, something old and tired passed behind her eyes before the calm returned. "Not this world," she said. "But patterns like it. Every dangerous place follows some kind of rhythm. If you pay attention long enough, you just have to survive the part where you're learning it." Dessa Marlowe, sitting close to the fire, with her knees pulled to her chest, finally spoke, her voice small. "How are you not terrified right now?" Mira considered the question seriously, instead of brushing it off the way I expected. "I am," she said. "Just not the way you think. Fear can be useful, if you let it sharpen you instead of freeze you. Where I grew up, you learned that early, or you didn't grow up at all." Nobody asked what she meant by that. Not directly, not yet. There was too much darkness pressing in around us, too many unknown sounds threading through the trees, for any of us to spend energy on curiosity we couldn't afford. We split into watches, 2 cadets awake at all times while the others tried to rest, though sleep came in short, uneasy bursts for most of us. I took the second watch with Mira, sitting near the edge of the firelight while the jungle breathed and clicked and rustled around us. "Tell me something useful," I said quietly, keeping my voice low so I wouldn't wake the others. "Not comforting, useful." She smiled slightly at that, appreciating the honesty. "All right, useful. That creature earlier, the long one that circled us. Did you notice its eyes?" "I noticed it had them," I said. "They don't reflect light the way most night hunters do," she said. "No shine when the flare hit it. That means it doesn't rely on eyesight the way we assumed. It's hunting by vibration, maybe scent. Which means staying still isn't just about hiding from sight. It's about staying quiet in a way that actually matters here." I stared at her, unsettled by how much she had already pieced together in the span of a single evening. "How did you notice all that in the middle of nearly getting hurt?" "Because noticing things is how you stop nearly getting hurt," she said simply. "Panic feels productive, but it isn't. Watching is." Something shifted in the brush beyond the firelight, and both of us tensed instantly, rifles rising in the same motion. A pair of low eyes caught the edge of the flame's glow, watching us from a safe distance, unmoving. "Don't react," Mira whispered. "If it wanted to close the distance, it already would have. It's deciding." We stayed frozen, breathing slow and even, watching the shape watch us back. Long seconds stretched into what felt like minutes, until finally the eyes blinked out, retreating deeper into the dark without a sound. "It decided we weren't worth it," Mira said, exhaling slowly. "Not yet, anyway." "That's reassuring," I muttered. "It should be," she said. "Means we're learning the rhythm too." The night passed in fragments like that, moments of held breath, followed by long stretches of watching shadows that never fully resolved into anything. By the time the twin suns finally broke over the horizon, painting the jungle in pale orange light, all 11 of us were still standing, though exhaustion sat heavy behind every set of eyes. Commander Ashgrove's voice crackled briefly through our comm units at first light, cold and clipped as always. 31 cadets remained unaccounted for, 9 confirmed lost. The number would update as data came in. Extraction remained 14 days out, contingent on survival. The words landed like a stone in my stomach. 9 cadets, gone, in less than a single night. I looked around our small circle, at faces pale with fatigue and worry, and understood how easily we could have been among that number. Mira took the news differently. She listened, jaw tightening slightly, eyes distant for a moment, before she straightened and looked at the rest of us with something steadier than sympathy. "We're not going to be part of that count," she said. "Not today, not any day between now and extraction." "You can't promise that," Torin said, frustration cracking through his voice. "Nobody can promise that here." "I'm not promising luck," Mira said. "I'm promising work. There's a difference. Luck runs out. Work doesn't, as long as you keep doing it." She stood and began organizing the group, with a calm efficiency none of us expected from someone so quiet back at the academy. She assigned tasks, water collection, perimeter reinforcement, weapon checks, rotating rest schedules, speaking with an authority that nobody questioned, because somehow, in the space of one night, she had already proven herself right, more times than any of us could count. I found myself following her lead without hesitation, the same way the others did, drawn by the simple fact that she hadn't been wrong yet. By mid-morning, we had built a stronger perimeter, reinforced with sharpened stakes angled outward, and a rough shelter woven from broad leaves and vines to keep the worst of the heat off during the day. Mira worked alongside everyone, hands blistered, sweat cutting clean lines through the dirt on her face, never once complaining, never once slowing down. During a short break, Lyra's son sat beside her, offering a share of purified water. "Where did you learn to do all this?" she asked. "Really, because none of it lines up with anything in your training file." Mira accepted the water, drank slowly, considering the question with more weight than she had given the others earlier. "My training file only covers 2 years," she said. It doesn't cover the 16 before that. What happened in those 16 years? Lyra asked gently. Mira looked out toward the tree line, toward the jungle that had already tested us more than once since we landed, and something in her expression softened into memory rather than worry. Home happened, she said simply, and didn't say more, though the weight behind those two words settled over the group like something none of us were ready to fully understand yet. The day passed in careful, tiring work, punctuated by distant sounds that never quite resolved into danger, though the tension never fully left any of us. By afternoon, we had confirmed contact with another group of surviving cadets nearly a mile east, 6 of them led by Garen Holt, a broad-shouldered cadet known for his stubborn calm under pressure. Mira suggested combining forces before nightfall, reasoning that a larger group meant more eyes, more hands, more chances of surviving whatever the Deathworld threw at us next. Nobody argued. By the time the suns began sinking again, our numbers had grown to 17, spread across a stretch of jungle we were slowly learning to read. That evening, as the fire crackled low and the jungle settled into its familiar chorus of clicks and distant growls, Garen approached Mira directly, studying her with open curiosity. "Word's already spreading about you," he said. "People are saying you knew what that flare would do before you even used it, that you read the whole jungle like a book nobody else can open." Mira huffed a quiet laugh, shaking her head. "I'm reading it the same way everyone else could, if they stopped panicking long enough to look." "Maybe," Garen said, "or maybe you've just seen worse than this before." She didn't answer right away, staring into the fire, the flickering light, catching something distant and old behind her eyes. "Where I'm from," she finally said, "worse isn't a rare thing. It's just Tuesday." The group fell quiet at that, unsure how to respond, though I noticed several cadets exchanging uneasy glances, beginning to understand that whatever Mira had lived through before reaching the academy, it had shaped her into someone this Deathworld couldn't easily break. Night deepened around us, and with it came a new sound, sharper and closer than anything from the previous evening, a series of rapid clicks echoing from multiple directions at once. Mira's posture changed instantly, calm giving way to focused alertness. "That's different," she said quietly. "That's coordination." "Coordination for what?" Owen asked, voice tight. "For hunting in a group," Mira said, "which means we need to stop thinking about single threats and start thinking about a pack." The clicking grew louder, circling the edges of our camp from at least 3 directions, and for the first time since we had landed, I saw a flicker of genuine urgency cross Mira's face, the calm still present, but sharpened now into something closer to readiness for a real fight. "Everyone up," she said, voice carrying clearly across the camp. "Weapons ready. Backs to the fire. Whatever's out there, it's not testing us anymore. It's closing in." 17 cadets rose together in the firelight, forming a tight circle, rifles aimed outward into the surrounding dark, hearts pounding in rhythm with the rapid clicking closing in from every side. Whatever waited beyond the light, it was about to show us exactly how dangerous this Deathworld truly was, and for the first time, even Mira's calm had shifted into something that looked, just barely, like true concern. The clicking stopped all at once, and the silence that followed was worse than the noise had been. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady but fast, and the quiet shuffle of 17 cadets shifting their weight, waiting for something to break the stillness. Mira held up one hand, fingers spread, a silent signal to hold position. Her eyes moved slowly across the tree line, tracking something the rest of us couldn't quite see yet. "They're spacing themselves," she whispered. "Listen for the gaps." I strained my ears and caught it then, a faint rustle to the left, followed by a matching rustle to the right, then one behind us, each sound perfectly timed to avoid overlapping with the others. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't hunting on instinct alone. They were coordinating with a precision that made my skin crawl. "How many?" Garen asked quietly, rifle trained on the darkness ahead. "At least 6, Mira said. "Maybe more. They're using the trees to mask their numbers, moving when we're distracted by a sound in another direction. That's a strategy, Nia said, voice tight with disbelief. Animals don't use strategy. These do, Mira said. Which means they've done this before, which means they know it works. A shape burst from the tree line without warning, faster than anything should move on 4 legs, its body low and covered in thick russet fur that blended almost perfectly with the jungle floor. It crossed half the distance to our circle before anyone could react, and only the sharp crack of Garen's rifle stopped it, the shot catching it across the shoulder and sending it tumbling sideways with a furious snarl. It didn't retreat. It rolled once, regained its footing, and circled wide, joining what I now realized was a full pack moving just beyond the firelight, eyes glinting here and there as they shifted position, testing our formation for weakness. "Hold the circle," Mira called out, voice steady despite the chaos building around us. "Don't break formation. If we scatter, we're finished." Another shape darted from the shadows, feinting toward Dessa before veering off at the last second, drawing her rifle in the wrong direction, just long enough for a second creature to lunge from behind. Turan caught it with a solid shot before it reached her, the impact throwing it back into the brush with a yelp of pain. "They're testing every gap," Mira shouted. "Watch your neighbor's blind spot, not just your own." I understood then what she meant, adjusting my angle slightly to cover the space between myself and Lyra, watching for exactly the kind of feint that had almost caught Dessa off guard. The pack seemed to sense the shift in our formation, pulling back slightly, reassessing. "They're patient," Mira said, breathing hard but steady. "That's the real danger here. They're not going to throw everything at us at once. They're going to wear us down." "So what do we do?" Owen asked, voice edged with panic. "We can't fight patience with panic." "No," Mira agreed. "We fight it with the same thing. We hold. We don't waste shots. We let them come to us, instead of chasing shadows." The pack circled for nearly 10 more minutes, testing the edges of our formation with quick, probing rushes that never fully committed, each one designed to find a gap that never quite appeared, thanks to Mira's constant adjustments and calm direction. Slowly, the rustling began to fade, retreating deeper into the jungle until the clicking finally stopped altogether. Silence returned, heavy and uncertain, until Mira finally lowered her rifle slightly, though her eyes stayed fixed on the tree line. "They're gone," she said. "For now." "For now," Torin repeated, exhaling shakily. "Great. Really comforting." "It should be," Mira said. "They only retreat when the cost outweighs the reward. We just proved we're not worth the risk. That buys us time." The group slowly relaxed, weapons lowering, shoulders sagging with released tension, though nobody sat back down right away. The adrenaline took a long time to fade, replaced eventually by exhausted relief, as the reality settled in that all 17 of us had survived the encounter without a single serious injury. I found myself standing beside Mira as the others began settling back into their positions, the fire crackling low between us. "You knew exactly what to do out there," I said. "Every move, every adjustment. That wasn't training. That was instinct." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the dying flames, before she finally spoke, her voice softer than I had heard it before. "Where I grew up," she said, "we didn't have training scenarios. We had reality. You learned formation discipline because the alternative was losing someone you loved. You learned patience because panic got people hurt faster than any predator could. Your file said you were from a standard colony world," I said. "Comfortable, stable, nothing like that." Mira laughed quietly, though there was no humor in it. "My file says a lot of things that make people comfortable asking fewer questions." "So what's the truth?" I asked. She looked at me directly then, something old and heavy behind her eyes, the calm mask slipping just enough to show what lay beneath it. "The truth is, I'm not from a colony world," she said. "I'm from Old Earth." The words hit differently than I expected. Old Earth was a name mentioned in history archives, a cautionary tale taught in academy classes about the collapse that had nearly ended humanity centuries ago. Climate collapse layered over failed governments, layered over resource wars that had turned entire continents into wastelands. Most species assumed old Earth had been fully abandoned generations ago, its surviving population relocated to safer colony worlds long before any of us were born. "I thought old Earth was uninhabitable," I said. "Evacuated centuries ago." "Most of it is uninhabitable," Mira said. "But not all of it. Some of us stayed. Some of us had nowhere else to go, or refused to leave what was left. My grandmother stayed. My mother stayed. I was born in what used to be called the Flooded Belt, in a shelter built from the bones of an old city nobody remembers the name of anymore." The others had gone quiet around us, listening despite themselves, drawn by the weight in her voice. "We didn't have twin suns or hunting packs," she continued. "We had storms that could flatten a shelter in an hour, water that had to be earned and rationed, food that came from whatever we could grow in soil poisoned 200 years ago. We had our own predators too, just not the kind with fur and teeth. Ours came in the form of desperation, people willing to do anything for an extra ration of clean water." Dessa's voice broke the silence, quiet and uncertain. "How did you survive that? How does anyone survive that?" Mira considered the question carefully before answering. "You survive by refusing to believe the world owes you anything easier than what it's already given you. You survive by learning every pattern the danger follows, because knowledge is the only weapon that never runs out of ammunition. And you survive by finding people you trust enough to watch your back, because nobody makes it alone, no matter how strong they think they are." I studied her in the dim firelight, understanding now why this Deathworld, with all its predators and dangers, hadn't broken her the way it had broken so many other cadets in the first few hours. "This place isn't nothing to you," I said slowly, "but it's not the worst thing you've faced either." "No," Mira agreed. "It's not. It has breathable air. It has plants that don't need to be tested 12 times before you risk eating them. It has water I don't have to fight another family for. Compared to home, this is almost peaceful, once you learn its rhythm." "That's what you meant," I said, "when you said this felt like vacation." She nodded slowly. "I meant every word of it. Not because this place is safe, because I've already survived worse, and surviving worse teaches you that almost everything after that is survivable too, as long as you keep your head clear and keep working the problem instead of running from it." Garen, who had been listening quietly from a few feet away, finally spoke, his voice thoughtful rather than skeptical now. "That's why you weren't afraid when we first landed. You'd already decided fear wasn't going to be useful here." "Fear is always useful," Mira corrected gently. "It tells you where the danger is. What isn't useful is letting fear decide what you do next. That decision belongs to you, not to the fear." The fire crackled low between us, and for a long moment, nobody spoke, each of us processing the weight of what she had shared. It explained everything: the calm under pressure, the instinctive read of danger, the steady leadership that had already saved multiple lives since we landed. It wasn't training that had shaped her, it was survival, real survival, the kind none of the rest of us had ever truly known. "Does the Academy know," I asked quietly, "about where you're really from?" "They know," Mira said. "It's classified, mostly because old Earth survivors are rare enough that Command doesn't want other species asking uncomfortable questions about why humanity's homeworld still has people struggling to survive on it, generations after the collapse was supposed to be handled." "That's not right," Lyra said, frowning. "Hiding that isn't right." "No," Mira agreed, "it's not. But it's not my fight to have right now. Right now, my fight is keeping everyone in this circle alive long enough to see extraction." Something shifted in the group after that conversation, a quiet respect settling over everyone that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just that Mira had proven herself capable, it was that we finally understood why, and understanding made her leadership feel earned rather than accidental. We resumed our rotating watch through the remainder of the night, the jungle settling into a calmer rhythm after the failed hunt, though none of us fully relaxed until the twin suns finally broke over the horizon once more, marking the start of our third day on the Deathworld. Commander Ashgrove's voice crackled through the comm units at first light, delivering updated numbers with the same cold precision as before. 26 cadets remained unaccounted for. 14 confirmed lost. Extraction remained 11 days out. The number hit harder this time, knowing how close we had come to adding to it during the night's encounter. I looked around our circle of 17 survivors, all of us exhausted but alive, and understood clearly now how much of that survival traced directly back to the girl who had smiled when the rest of us had been ready to break. Mira stood at the center of the group as the morning light strengthened, studying the map data our comm units had managed to compile overnight, a rough sketch of the surrounding terrain based on limited orbital scans. "There's a ridgeline 2 days east," she said, tracing the path with her finger. "Higher ground, better visibility, fewer places for anything to sneak up on us. If we can reach it before the next hunting cycle begins, we'll have a much stronger position to hold until extraction." 2 days through that jungle, Toran said, glancing toward the dense red trees surrounding us. "After last night, that sounds like a lot to ask." "It is a lot to ask," Mira agreed, "but staying here means facing that pack again, and next time they'll have learned from what didn't work last night. They'll adjust. We need to be somewhere they haven't already studied before that happens." Garen nodded slowly, studying the terrain sketch with a soldier's careful eye. "She's right. Staying still helped us survive one encounter. It won't help us survive a dozen more." The group began preparing for the journey, packing what little gear we had, reinforcing weak points in our equipment, and rationing what remained of our supplies with careful precision. Mira moved through the preparations with the same steady focus she had shown since the moment we landed, though I noticed something different in her posture now. A quiet weight settled over her shoulders that hadn't been there before her story had come out the night before. I found a moment alone with her while she checked over her rifle, testing the mechanism with practiced efficiency. "Are you all right?" I asked. "Talking about home like that, it looked like it cost you something." She paused, considering the question honestly rather than brushing it aside. "It does cost something," she admitted. "Every time. But hiding it costs more, especially out here, where everyone needs to understand why the decisions I'm making work, instead of just trusting blindly that they will." "They trust you now," I said, "more than they did before. Trust built on understanding lasts longer than trust built on results alone," she said. "Results can be luck, understanding can't." I thought about that as we prepared to move out, 17 cadets carrying the weight of a Deathworld's dangers and the quiet burden of knowing exactly how much worse things could be, thanks to the girl who had already survived worse and refused to let it break her. As we stepped beyond the edge of our camp and into the thick red jungle stretching toward the distant ridgeline, I understood we weren't just walking toward higher ground. We were walking further into the lessons Mira had already learned the hard way, and hoping they would be enough to carry the rest of us through whatever waited ahead. The jungle felt different once we started moving through it, instead of watching it from the edge of a fire. Every step sank slightly into soft, dark soil, and the canopy above thickened until only thin shafts of orange light broke through, striping the ground in shifting patterns as branches swayed overhead. Mira walked near the front of our column, reading the terrain with the same careful attention she gave everything else, calling out warnings before the rest of us even noticed the danger she had spotted. "Watch the vines hanging low there," she said, pointing toward a cluster of thin, dark tendrils drooping from a branch ahead. "Don't touch them. They release something when disturbed." I noticed a bird, or whatever counts as a bird here, drop out of the sky after brushing one on the way down. We gave the vines a wide berth, and moments later, Owen confirmed her warning when a small winged creature drifted too close to an identical cluster further down the path, twitched once, and fell motionless to the jungle floor. "How do you keep spotting these things before they happen?" Nia asked, genuine curiosity replacing the skepticism she had carried since we first met Mira. "Practice," Mira said simply, "and paying attention to what almost kills things smaller than you. If it can drop a bird from the sky, it can definitely drop one of us." The column moved carefully through the afternoon, Mira calling out hazards as we found them: sharp-edged plants that could slice through thin fabric, patches of ground that looked solid but hid soft mud beneath, and once, a low burrow entrance she insisted we walk 20 meters around rather than risk disturbing whatever lived inside it. By late afternoon, exhaustion had settled deep into all of us, muscles aching from the humid heat and the constant tension of watching every shadow for movement. We stopped near a shallow stream, the water running clear enough that Mira deemed it safe to purify and drink, a small relief after hours of careful, draining travel. Dessa sat heavily against a smooth stone near the water's edge, rubbing her sore feet. "How much further to the ridge?" she asked. "Another day and a half, if the terrain stays like this," Mira said, studying the rough map data again. "Maybe less, if we find a clearer path once we cross the stream." Garen crouched beside the water, filling containers carefully. "You've kept us alive for 3 days now. I want to know something honestly. Do you actually think we can survive the full 14, or are you just keeping us calm until things fall apart?" The question hung heavy in the air, and I watched Mira consider it seriously, rather than offering an easy reassurance. "I think we can survive it," she said finally. "Not because I'm certain nothing will go wrong. Things will go wrong. Something always does. I think we can survive it because we're already doing the things that matter most, watching for patterns, working together, refusing to let fear make our decisions for us. That's not luck, that's a method. Methods hold up even when luck runs out." Garen nodded slowly, seeming to accept the honesty of the answer more than he would have accepted a simple promise. We resumed moving as the light began to shift toward evening, aiming to find defensible ground before full darkness returned. The stream had led us into slightly higher terrain, rockier and more open than the dense jungle we had crossed earlier, and Mira called a halt near a cluster of large boulders that offered natural cover on 3 sides. "This will do for tonight," she said, studying the formation with satisfaction. "Better than open jungle, fewer approach angles to worry about." We settled in quickly, building a small fire within the boulder cluster, the stone walls helping to contain the light while still providing warmth against the cooling night air. The rotation of watches continued as it had the previous nights, though exhaustion made the hours drag longer than before. I took a watch alongside Turan this time, the 2 of us sitting near the fire, while the others rested uneasily around us. "I used to think she was just quiet," Torin said, glancing toward where Mira slept lightly, rifle still within reach, even in rest. "Back at the academy. Quiet, unremarkable, easy to overlook. I never imagined any of this was underneath that." "None of us did," I said. "I think that's the point. She never wanted anyone to see it, until it became the only thing that could keep us alive out here." "Do you think she resents it?" Torin asked. "Having to reveal all of it just to keep us from falling apart?" I considered the question, thinking back to the weight I had seen settle over her shoulders after sharing her story. "I think she resents that it was necessary," I said. "Not that she had to share it. She seems like someone who'd rather be useful than hidden, if given the choice. The academy just never gave her that choice before." The night passed more quietly than the previous ones, the rocky terrain seeming to discourage whatever predators hunted the denser jungle below. By morning, all 17 of us remained accounted for, and Commander Ashgrove's update carried slightly better news for once. 22 cadets remained unaccounted for. 18 confirmed lost. Extraction remained 10 days out. The numbers still stung, each one representing someone who had jumped from that shuttle alongside us, but the rate of loss had slowed since our group had grown larger and better organized, and I found myself hoping that trend would continue. We resumed the journey toward the ridge as the twin suns climbed higher, the terrain growing steadily rockier and more open, offering better visibility but less natural cover than the jungle had provided. Mira remained vigilant, despite the improved sightlines, reminding everyone that open ground brought its own dangers, different from the jungles but no less real. "Anything that hunts here has to rely more on speed than ambush," she explained, as we crossed a wide stretch of exposed stone. "That means we'll see it coming, but it also means we won't have much time to react once we do." Her warning proved accurate within the hour, when a distant shape appeared on the horizon, moving with a speed that made my stomach drop the moment I registered it. Whatever it was, it covered ground far faster than anything we had encountered so far, closing the distance between us with alarming speed. "Formation," Mira called sharply, already moving the group into a tighter cluster near a jagged outcropping of stone that offered at least partial cover. "Whatever that is, it's fast, but speed usually trades off against maneuverability. Use the rocks." The creature closed the remaining distance in under a minute, and as it came into clearer view, I understood immediately why the Academy classified this world as Class 3. It stood taller than any of us, its body built for speed, with long, powerful legs and a low, narrow skull filled with rows of sharp teeth. Its skin shimmered faintly, shifting between shades of gray and brown that made it difficult to focus on directly, some kind of natural camouflage that blurred its exact outline even at close range. "Don't look directly at the shimmer," Mira warned quickly. "Track its movement, not its shape. The camouflage messes with depth perception if you focus on it too long." I forced my eyes to follow the creature's motion rather than its confusing outline, and the disorientation eased slightly, enough to track its approach as it circled the outcropping, searching for a way around our defensive position. Garen fired first, the shot catching the creature across its flank, drawing a furious screech that echoed off the surrounding stone. It didn't retreat the way the pack predators had the previous night. Instead, it turned aggressively toward the source of the shot, closing distance with terrifying speed. "Everyone, focus fire on the same point," Mira shouted, already aiming carefully. "Don't scatter your shots. Concentrate the damage." We opened fire together, a coordinated volley that struck the creature solidly across its shoulder and neck, staggering its charge just before it would have reached Garen's position. It stumbled, shrieking in pain and fury, before finally breaking off and retreating across the open ground, disappearing over a distant rise far faster than it had appeared. The group stood in stunned silence for a long moment afterward, breathing hard, weapons still raised toward the now empty horizon. "That was close," Owen finally said, voice shaking slightly. "Too close." "It was testing our formation," Mira said, lowering her rifle slowly. "Just like the pack last night, but faster, more aggressive. It'll be back, probably with better information about how we fight." "How do you know it'll come back?" Lyra asked. "Because predators that size don't waste that much effort on prey they've decided to abandon," Mira said grimly. "It learned something from that exchange. We need to use the time before it returns to learn something too." We pushed onward toward the ridge with renewed urgency after that encounter, Mira analyzing every detail of the creature's attack pattern as we walked, discussing camouflage countermeasures and formation adjustments with a focus that left little room for the fear still lingering in the rest of us. "Its shimmer works against direct focus," she said, thinking aloud as much as explaining to the group. "But if we track relative motion against the terrain, instead of trying to focus on its body directly, the disorientation should ease. We just need everyone practicing that before the next encounter." We spent part of our remaining travel time doing exactly that, taking turns spotting distant movement across the open terrain and practicing the technique Mira had described, until even Dessa, who had struggled the most with fear since we landed, managed to track a distant shape without the disorientation that had plagued us during the first encounter. By late afternoon, the terrain began climbing more steeply, the ridgeline finally visible in the distance, jagged and gray against the deepening orange of the sky. Mira studied it with quiet satisfaction, though her expression remained cautious rather than fully relieved. "We'll reach the base by nightfall," she said. "The climb itself will need to wait until morning, when we can see the safest path clearly." As the group settled in for another night, this time within a shallow rock formation near the base of the ridge, Commander Ashgrove's update arrived, with numbers that hit differently than before. 20 cadets remained unaccounted for. 20 confirmed lost. Extraction remained 9 days out. Half of the original 40, gone. I looked around our circle of 17, still intact despite everything the Deathworld had thrown at us, and understood with sudden clarity how narrow the margin between survival and loss truly was on this world. Mira sat near the fire that night, quieter than usual, her eyes distant as she stared into the flames. I settled beside her, sensing something weighing on her that hadn't been there during the earlier encounters. 20 gone, she said quietly, before I could ask. That number sits heavier than the others did. "Why this one?" I asked. "Because we're halfway through," she said. "And halfway means we still have just as far to go as we've already come, with less certainty about what's waiting ahead. The creature we fought today was faster and more aggressive than anything from the first 2 nights. If the danger keeps escalating at that rate, the second half of this could be worse than the first. But we handled it," I said. "Together, because of everything you've taught us." "We handled it once," she said. "It'll come back smarter. Everything out here does, eventually. That's the part that worries me. Not whether we can survive one encounter, whether we can keep adapting fast enough to survive all of them." I didn't have an answer for that, and for the first time since we had landed, I saw something close to genuine doubt cross Mira's expression, quickly suppressed but not quite hidden. It struck me then that even someone who had already survived one of the harshest environments imaginable could still feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down when the stakes were this high, for this many people depending on her judgment. "You don't have to have all the answers," I said quietly. "You've already given us more than any of us expected. Whatever happens next, we're facing it together, not just relying on you alone." She looked at me then, something grateful flickering behind the exhaustion in her eyes. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "It's easy to forget, when everyone's looking to you for the next move, that you're allowed to not have it all figured out." The fire crackled low between us as the night deepened, the jagged silhouette of the ridge rising dark against the star-filled sky above, promising both safety and unknown challenges once we reached the higher ground waiting for us at dawn. Whatever the second half of our 14 days held, I understood now that surviving it would require every lesson Mira had already taught us, and likely many more she hadn't discovered yet herself. Morning arrived with a sharp, cold wind sweeping down from the ridge above, a stark change from the humid heat of the jungle we had left behind. Mira was already awake before the rest of us stirred, studying the rocky path upward with careful eyes, tracing the safest route through gaps in the stone. "The climb looks steady," she said, as the group gathered their gear. "Steep in places, but nothing technical. We should reach the top well before midday." We began the ascent shortly after, the rocky terrain testing muscles already worn thin from days of constant tension and travel. Mira led from the front, calling out foot placements and warning of loose stone, her voice steady despite the exhaustion I knew she carried the same as the rest of us. About halfway up, Nia's foot slipped on a patch of loose gravel, sending her sliding toward a drop that would have ended badly. Garen caught her arm just in time, hauling her back to stable footing, both of them breathing hard from the sudden scare. "Careful," Mira called back. "Test each step before committing your full weight. We're not in a hurry that's worth a fall." The climb continued more cautiously after that, each cadet moving with deliberate care, until finally, close to midday, we crested the top of the ridge and found ourselves looking out over a vast stretch of the Deathworld below. Jungle canopy rolling out toward the horizon in every direction, broken here and there by rocky outcroppings similar to the one we now stood upon. "This is good ground," Garen said, surveying the wide, flat clearing spread across the ridgetop. Clear sightlines in every direction. Nothing can approach without us seeing it coming from a distance. Mira nodded, though her attention had already shifted towards something else. A low rumble echoing faintly from somewhere below the ridge, deeper and more resonant than anything we had heard so far. "That's new," she said quietly, moving toward the edge of the clearing to look down into the jungle below. I followed her gaze and saw movement far below, a massive shape shifting through the canopy, large enough to bend and snap branches thick as my entire body as it moved. Even from this distance, the sheer scale of it sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cold ridge wind. "What is that?" Torin breathed, coming to stand beside us. "I don't know," Mira admitted, something rare in her voice, an honest uncertainty that unsettled me more than any predator we had faced so far. "But it's bigger than anything we've encountered, and it's moving in this direction." The rumble sounded again, closer this time, shaking loose small stones from the ridge face beneath our feet. Commander Ashgrove's voice crackled through the comm units moments later, urgent in a way it hadn't been during any of the previous updates. "Attention all surviving cadets," the voice said. "Orbital scans have detected a large-scale apex predator active in your region. Classification unknown. This creature was not present during initial world surveys. Exercise extreme caution. This unit designates it primary threat level for the remainder of your evaluation period." The update ended, leaving us standing on the ridge with the weight of that warning settling heavily over the group. Something new, something the Academy itself hadn't anticipated, was moving through the jungle below us, and it was heading our way. "We have the high ground," Mira said, thinking quickly, her uncertainty giving way to focused calculation. "That's an advantage. If it can't climb this ridge easily, we need to figure out exactly what it is before deciding whether to hold here or move." We watched from the ridge edge as the massive shape drew closer, breaking finally into a clearing below where we could see it fully for the first time. It stood taller than any structure I had seen on the Deathworld so far, its body long and low despite its height, covered in thick plates of what looked like natural armor, dark and ridged like ancient stone. 4 powerful legs carried it with surprising grace for something so massive, and a long tail trailed behind it, ending in a cluster of sharp, bony spikes. "It's not built for climbing," Mira observed, studying its proportions carefully. "Too heavy, legs built for power over agility on flat ground. If it comes for the ridge, it'll have to find a path around, not straight up." "That buys us time," Garen said, "but not forever, if it decides we're worth the effort." Mira's eyes narrowed, tracking the creature's movement as it paused below, seeming to study the ridge itself, perhaps sensing our presence even from that distance. "It's not hunting the way the others did," she said slowly. "Watch how it's moving. It's not stalking, it's patrolling. This might be territorial ground, and we've planted ourselves right at the edge of it." "Meaning what?" Lyra asked. "Meaning if we stay quiet and don't provoke it, there's a chance it simply moves on," Mira said. "Territorial animals often don't chase beyond their boundary unless directly threatened. But if it decides this ridge belongs to its territory too, we're going to have a very serious problem." The group fell into tense silence, watching the massive creature below as it continued its slow patrol along the tree line, seemingly unaware or uninterested in the 17 cadets watching from the stone ridge above. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, though the sun's position told me barely 20 minutes had passed, before the creature finally turned and moved back into the denser jungle, its massive form gradually disappearing from view. A collective breath of relief passed through the group, though Mira remained tense, watching the tree line long after the creature had vanished. "It's still out there," she said. "It didn't leave, it just stopped patrolling where we could see it." We spent the remainder of the day fortifying our position on the ridge, using loose stone to build a low barrier around the clearing's edges, testing sightlines from every angle, and rationing what remained of our dwindling supplies carefully. Mira moved through the preparations with renewed focus, though I noticed her checking the tree line below more frequently than she had during the previous days. That evening, Commander Ashgrove's update carried news that shifted the mood of the entire group. 18 cadets remained unaccounted for. 22 confirmed lost. Extraction remained 8 days out, though the update included an addition none of us expected. Due to the emergence of the newly classified apex predator, extraction protocols would be reassessed, with a possibility of early retrieval should conditions on the ground become untenable. Early retrieval, Owen repeated, something like hope creeping into his exhausted voice. That means if things get bad enough, they might pull us out sooner. Or it means they're preparing us for the possibility that things get much worse before help arrives, Mira said quietly, unwilling to let false hope replace careful preparation. We plan for the full 8 days. Anything better than that is a bonus, not a guarantee. Night fell over the ridge, colder than any we had experienced in the jungle below, the open sky above filled with unfamiliar stars scattered across a deep violet expanse. The rotation of watches continued, though exhaustion had begun carving deep shadows beneath every cadet's eyes, 17 bodies running on reserves that had been spent days ago. I took the middle watch alongside Mira again, the two of us sitting near the low stone barrier, eyes fixed on the dark jungle below, where the massive predator continued to move somewhere in the shadows. "Do you think it'll come for us?" I asked quietly. "I don't know," Mira admitted. "That's the honest answer. Everything else on this world, I've been able to read, given enough time to watch it. This thing, I've only seen for 20 minutes. That's not enough to understand it fully." "But you have a guess," I pressed. She considered the question carefully before answering. "My guess is that it noticed us. Things that size don't move slowly through their own territory without reason, and it paused right at the edge of our position for longer than casual patrolling would explain. I think it's deciding whether we're worth the effort, the same way that smaller pack did on the first night. The difference is, if this one decides we are worth it, we won't have the same options we had against the pack." The weight of that settled heavily between us, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke, listening instead to the distant rustle of the jungle below, wondering if each sound carried the first signs of that massive shape returning toward the ridge. "Whatever happens," I finally said, "you've already kept this group alive longer than anyone expected. Whatever this creature decides, that won't change what you've already done." Mira looked at me, something softer passing behind her tired eyes. "Thank you for that," she said. "But I don't measure this by what's already happened. I measure it by how many of us are still standing when that extraction shuttle finally arrives." The rumble returned, sometime past midnight, deeper and closer than before, shaking loose stone from the ridge face and jolting every sleeping cadet awake in an instant. Mira was on her feet immediately, rifle raised, eyes scanning the darkness below with sharp focus. "It's coming," she said, voice cutting through the sudden chaos of cadets scrambling for position. "Formation, now. Same as before, backs together, watch your neighbor's blind spot." 17 cadets formed a tight defensive circle within the low stone barrier, weapons trained outward into the darkness, hearts pounding as the massive rumble grew steadily louder, closer, until finally the tree line at the base of the ridge shuddered violently, branches snapping as the enormous creature forced its way through, revealing itself fully in the pale light of the 2 moons now rising above the horizon. It was even larger up close than it had appeared from a distance, its armored plates catching the moonlight in dull, ridged patterns, its eyes glowing faintly with a cold, calculating awareness that made my blood run cold. It paused at the base of the ridge, studying the barrier we had built, seeming to weigh whether the climb was worth whatever it sensed waiting above. "Nobody move," Mira whispered urgently. "No sudden light, no sudden sound. Let it decide on its own." The creature shifted its weight, testing the lower slope of the ridge with one massive foot, stone crumbling beneath the pressure. For a long, agonizing moment, it seemed poised to begin the climb, and I felt the entire group tense in unison, prepared for a fight none of us were certain we could win. Then, slowly, it withdrew its foot, turning its massive head away from the ridge, and with a final low rumble that shook the ground beneath us, it retreated back into the dense jungle below, its enormous form gradually swallowed by the darkness, until even the sound of its movement faded into silence. The group remained frozen for several long minutes afterward, weapons still raised, breathing hard, hardly daring to believe the danger had truly passed. Finally, Mira lowered her rifle slowly, exhaling a long, shaking breath. "It decided we weren't worth the climb," she said quietly. For now, Garen echoed, voice heavy with exhausted relief. "I think I've heard that phrase enough times to start believing it's just how this world says goodbye." A tired, genuine laugh rippled through the group, the first real moment of levity since we had landed, and even Mira allowed herself a small, relieved smile, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time in hours. The remaining days passed in a blur of careful vigilance, the massive predator never returning to test the ridge again, though its distant rumble occasionally echoed through the jungle below as a reminder of what waited just beyond our fortified position. Mira continued guiding the group through each challenge, refining our formations, sharing every lesson she had carried with her from a homeworld far harsher than any Deathworld the Academy could have designed. On the 8th day, precisely as promised, a shuttle broke through the orange clouds above the ridge, engines roaring against the wind as it descended toward our clearing. 17 exhausted cadets watched it land with a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming relief, the reality of survival finally settling in after days that had felt endless. Commander Ashgrove met us at the shuttle's ramp, studying our group with an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between surprise and grudging respect. 17, she said, glancing at a datapad in her hand. The highest survival count recorded for a Class 3 evaluation in Academy history. Nobody responded immediately, too tired and too overwhelmed to fully process the significance of that number, though I saw Mira's eyes flicker with quiet satisfaction, not pride exactly, but the simple acknowledgement of work that had paid off. As we boarded the shuttle and the engines began powering up for the climb back toward orbit, Commander Ashgrove approached Mira directly, her clipped tone softening slightly with genuine curiosity. "Your file lists minimal survival training," she said. "Yet cadets across this evaluation are crediting you directly with their survival. I'd like to understand how." Mira glanced out the shuttle window at the shrinking ridge below, the vast jungle stretching toward the horizon, the world that had tried and failed to break any of us over the past 8 days. "Where I grew up," she said simply, "surviving wasn't optional. You learned every lesson this world could teach, or you didn't get another chance to learn anything at all. Compared to that, this place gave us actual choices, real information to work with. That's not nothing, that's everything." The commander studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly, something like understanding settling over her expression. "I'll want a full report on your background," she said, "but that can wait until we're back at the Academy." As the shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere, the Deathworld shrinking into a distant orange curve below us, I found myself sitting beside Mira, watching the planet that had tested every cadet aboard this shuttle beyond anything the Academy could have simulated in a classroom. "So," I said, "was it everything you expected?" She considered the question with the same careful thoughtfulness she gave everything, a small, tired smile finally breaking through the exhaustion on her face. "Better," she said. "Running water, breathable air. Predators you could actually see coming once you learned to look. After where I grew up, that really did feel like vacation." I laughed at that, a genuine, exhausted laugh that released something tight I had been carrying since the moment that shuttle door first blew open over the jungle canopy. Around us, the remaining cadets settled into their seats, the weight of survival finally giving way to quiet relief. each of us carrying lessons from a girl who had walked into the deadliest environment the Academy could throw at us and found, somehow, a kind of peace in it. As the shuttle continued its climb toward the waiting Academy vessel above, Mira leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for the first time in 8 days without the tension of constant vigilance behind them. "Where do you think they'll send us next?" I asked quietly. She opened one eye, that familiar, easy smile returning fully now that the immediate danger had finally passed. "Wherever it is," she said, "I doubt it'll be worse than home. And if it is, well, at least I'll know what to do." The shuttle carried us onward, 17 survivors out of 40, forever changed by 8 days on a world built to kill us, and by the quiet, unshakable girl who had shown us all that survival was never about the world being kind. It was about refusing to let it decide who you became.